Hi, we'd like to welcome you to another in a series of webinars designed for departments of transportation. And I'm Terry Bills, and I'm the Transportation Industry Manager here at Esri. And today I'm joined by Tom Branneman, Solution Engineer from our Transportation Sales team. Today's webinar is focused on how departments of transportation can utilize off-the-shelf capabilities in ArcGIS to enrich their standard workflows in materials management. We've generally found that few DOTs have considered how GIS can improve their materials management workflows, with the result that most materials management departments often still rely on paper-based processes, with few, if any, mobile tools for their field personnel. And we hope to show you today that with basic configuration, the ArcGIS suite can help bring greater efficiencies to your existing materials management workflows and better integrate your test and inspection data into your back office systems. Before we begin, I'd like to point out that we're recording this webinar, and while everyone will be on mute, there will be time for question and answers at the end of the presentation. You can type your questions into the question box, and we'll try to answer as many as time allows. And additionally, the slides that you see, which are part of this webinar, will be available to you on the GeoNet group, Departments of Transportation, and we'll give you the link at the end of the webinar. So the general landscape for US DOTs and materials management is generally divided into three different groups. One group of DOTs either has homegrown and home-developed systems, or secondly, workflows that are predominantly paper-based, and finally, a few DOTs that rely on an AASHTO-aware solution, which mostly lack either mobile or GIS capabilities. And while there are a number of different workflows supported in departments of materials management, central to most is the ability to allow internal and external users to collect and enter data related to sampling, testing, and certification, and then the ability to track and monitor field crews and maintain that test data both at the project and at the program level. What we will show you today is not meant to replace any laboratory information management system or materials management system that you might currently be using, but rather to leverage the power of spatial technology together with mobile capabilities to bring greater efficiencies and accountability to any existing system that a DOT may be using. And in fact, almost all of the functionality you see today can be integrated into any of those existing systems and workflows, giving you greater capacity and greater capability to schedule, to track and monitor field tests and inspections, and use that information to track materials tests at the project or even program level. But rather than me talking about it, let me turn this over to Tom, who will walk you through the various capabilities and workflows. So Tom?
Thanks, Terry. Let me just share my screen here. I think, do you need to stop sharing, Terry?
Yep.
There we go. Okay, can you see my screen, materials management workflow?
Indeed, we can.
Great. All right, well, again, this is Tom Branneman, and I'll walk you through a kind of a quick workflow showing how we can go through some of the phases of collecting sample data for collecting samples for a materials group, bringing those samples into the lab, performing the appropriate tests and recording the information from those tests, and then monitoring all those tests at the end. So this is the overall workflow that we're going to go through. The first step, assign a sample collection from a supplier, and this could be assigning just someone to go out in the field and perform a test in the field, but in this case we're going to collect a sample at a supplier location. That's our first step. The second step is for the person who's going to go out and collect that sample to navigate to that location and then collect the sample at that location. And then once that sample is created, that gets assigned to someone in the lab to process. Once that sample has come back to the lab, it gets assigned to someone in the lab. The person in the lab does their tests, and they record that information for their tests. And then at that point, that entire cycle is complete. And one of the things that we've heard from lots of people is that it'd be nice for the entire DOT to have visibility into that process and kind of see where things are and which tests have failed and which tests have passed. And that's where this last piece of monitoring those tests come in. So with that, I'll just go into the first step in the process, which is assigning a sample collection for someone to go out in the field and perform and collect a sample. So for this, I'm going to use a configuration of Workforce for ArcGIS. So Workforce allows me to assign jobs. It allows me to see where my workers are. You can see here in the map, I have 2 people. Me and my colleague Eric Rodenberg are a part of this. We get lots more. We can see where they are. We can see what's been assigned to them, and we can filter this stuff out so that we can just see the work that's been maybe unassigned or in progress. And that's just a couple of things that are currently in progress. So the work that I want to assign here is in Vincennes, Indiana. So I'm going to search for Vincennes, Indiana, right there. There it is. And one of the things that I want to assign work for Ready Mix Concrete on this plant right here, Jones and Sons Incorporated. So I want to create an assignment for to collect a sample at this particular location. And I could have searched for this individually. There's lots of different things that I could have in the map that I could assign. I could have my projects, and that's what you see here. The line is for this particular area. That's where we're doing project work, and we could send someone out in the field to collect a sample at that project location. But in this case, we're going to collect it at this ready mix concrete plant. So I'm going to create an assignment, and I choose what I want to collect at this location. So I'm going to collect a sample, and you can see if I was doing a test, maybe at that project location, I might do a slump test at that location. But here I'm just collecting a sample. I've already got I already have the location assigned. This is very important, so I'm going to give it a critical. I'm going to give it a due date of today and a time of, we'll give them until 4 o'clock today to get this sample collected. And if we have any other IDs or anything like that identifies this particular sample, I can paste that in, and any other information that we want to give to the person that's collecting that sample. So please collect number 43 sample for aggregate gradation test to be tested at the central lab. All right, that sounds great. And there we go. We've got the sample, or we got the work assigned to go out and collect this sample. And now I need to assign it to a particular worker. And I could have done this when I created it. I just wanted to show you this process. So I'll assign it to me. And now I have work to do out in the field. So that's what the first part of the workflow looks like for dispatching workers to go out into the field and assigning them work to collect test data. And with that, I'll go back to the PowerPoint. And now we're moving, that was the assign piece. Now we're going to move out into the field. So now I'm going to take on the role of someone different in the organization. Now I'm someone who goes out and collects samples out in the field. So for that, I'm going to use a field workflow where I'm going to navigate to that location. I'm going to see my work list, navigate to that location, and collect a sample at that location. And to do that, I'll share my my mobile device. I'm using an iPad here. And here I'm using Workforce for Arcgis on my iPad. So now I can see, since I'm logged in and I'm signed into this particular organization, so that it knows that it's me, and I know what work has been assigned to me because it's here in the list. And I just have one item in the list, but if I had lots of them, I could filter them and sort them by a variety of things. Maybe the distance. What's the closest one to me now? If I have several different samples to collect and they're all the same priority, maybe I just want to be efficient and get the one that is close to me. So I'm going to click on this one, and I can see that this is critical, so it's asking me to acknowledge it. So I will acknowledge that, and that gets communicated back in the dispatcher application that it has been acknowledged. So now they know that I have at least seen it, and I can see where it is here. So the first thing I can do here is click on this, and I can see all the information about it. This is a number 43 sample, so maybe I collect the appropriate tools for collecting this sample, and then I'm going to navigate to that assignment. And when I do that, it's going to open up the Navigator application. So this is another Navigator for Arcgis, another application that we provide that allows for full offline routing. And one of the things that's really nice about this, or a couple of things that are nice about this, is that the data that you have here in the map, this can come just from Esri, but it could also be augmented with your own data. So if you have specific gas stations where people are supposed to, state employees are supposed to get gas, we can put those in here. They can route to those locations. Any kind of custom locations can be included in this. I can also control what kind of navigation I'm doing, whether I'm in a car or truck, and that might influence my overall route that gets generated. I'll change that orientation so it's a little bit better there. But I'm in a car, so I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it there. So I can modify these things, and all this can be done completely offline. When I'm ready to go,
take the first exit to proceed on N Meridian Street. In 400 feet, turn right on West Washington Street.
I'll go ahead and stop that because that would take a while. We're simulating actually driving. I'm not driving right now, as you probably all guessed. But that can navigate me to that particular location. And up in the upper left-hand corner, you see Workforce up there. In the upper left-hand corner, I can click that to go back to Workforce. And once I'm at the location, I can see that, I'm only 199 feet away. We can see right here how far I am away from that location, and if I need to go any further on foot, I could do that here. And now I'm ready. Once I've navigated to that location, I'm ready to start collecting data at that location. So I'm going to actually start the job now that I'm here, okay, and that notifies the dispatcher that the job has been started. Let me move this out of the way, and I'll show you what the dispatcher actually sees. So back in the office, the dispatcher sees that now this is in progress. So there's the worker right next to the facility. The work is currently in progress. So they can get a real-time view of what's happening out there in the field while this data is being collected. And when I'm ready, I click that little widget right there that instead of navigating, I'm going to click Survey at Assignment. Now this brings up a specific form for this kind of work. You see at the very top it says Field Sample Collection. So this form, this is a Survey 123, another application, Survey 123 for ArcGIS. But this form from Survey 123 has been tied to that specific workflow. So I've got Field Sample Collection, and I've got the date that's already filled in here. All of my information has already been filled in, has been passed into this particular form. And now I can go through and start collecting information on the sample. What's the laboratory number, the pit location, all of that kind of thing. In addition, I have a barcode scanner here, and this barcode is important because I'm gonna peel off a sticker with this barcode and put it on the sample that I'm collecting. So I will scan that barcode, and that sets that barcode number, SFN 3485, into this form. And now as I stick that sticker to the sample, then it goes back to the lab, then this sample, this information I'm collecting can travel with that sample that's going back to the lab. Now I'm not going to make you watch me enter the rest of this information. I'm going to use a handy survey 1, 2, 3 trick, which is just have saved common answers that you're doing. So if I was collecting multiple samples from this particular location, I might save them as my favorite answers and then paste them in and change whatever I want to change along the way for each sample. But you can see here, there's some things that I'm just filling in, like the material specification and so forth. But the material name, that's a drop down. So you can see here, I'll actually type that in, number 43, and you can see as soon as I hit number, it filters this out, so I can just click on that particular value. So this validation that happens within the mobile application allows me to really get good data back in from the field from when this was collected. And I'm going to put in that date. This was sampled from a belt, and then I'll sign it. My wonderful signature. That's as good as I can do on with my finger. There we go. And there we go. I know the lab that it's going to. I've got all the information for the sample. I've fixed the barcode to my sample that's going to head back to the lab. And when I'm done, I can send this form back in. Now, if I'm not connected to the network right now, I can just send it later. But I am connected, so I'll do send now, and now that information goes back to the lab. I'm going to go back to workforce. So in the upper left-hand corner, you see there's that little workforce in black and white. If I click on that, I go back there, and now I can indicate that I'm done collecting that sample. I'm heading back to the lab with that sample. And if we go back to what the dispatcher sees, yep, that work has been completed at that location. So they're getting that real-time feedback for what's happening out there in the field. So let me go back to my workflow so that I help you keep track of where we are in this process. So the work was assigned, we navigated to it, we collected a sample from a supplier, and now we're ready for the next step, which is to assign someone to test that sample in the lab and to actually perform that test in the lab and record the results. So here we go. I'll turn that off. And so the next step in the process is actually for me to check my my email. So you can see here, I've got a new email that just came in that says a new sample has been created, and I'm going to click here to dispatch someone. So the important thing of this is that emails can be generated from within this process. So as the sample gets collected and recorded, we can automatically notify someone in the lab that says, hey, a sample is coming your way. You need to dispatch someone to work on that sample when it comes in. And when they click that, it opens up Workforce. It's going to open it up with a different project. So this project is focused on tracking tracking that sample when it's in the lab, and I'm going to assign that to me. It's currently assigned. I'm taking on a lot of roles here in the organization. Maybe I'm going to do this, or I could assign it to someone else in the lab. But the important thing here is that all the information about who collected it, the signature, and everything from that form is available to me, and a summary of it is available right here. So if I need to contact the person that collected that sample, the person that it's assigned to will have all of that information. So let's I'll close my email there, and I'll bring the mobile application back. So now I'm going to share my screen again, my iPad. So I did the first part already. It was really quick, where I used that link that was in the email to assign the work to someone in the lab when that test comes in. Now I'm going to open up on the workforce for the mobile. Now I'm going to take on the person that's actually working in the lab. And for that, I'm going to go to Materials Sample Tracking. This is all the everything that's been assigned in the lab. So now I can see that that lab test that has been assigned to me. And I can see here it's compact aggregate base. I can see all the information on it. I could email the person, and now I'm ready to start work. So I'm going to go ahead and start on that once it comes into the lab, and I don't need to do any navigation. I'm just going to survey at that assignment. So now in the lab, there's a completely different form that's associated with this workflow. Again, this is survey 1, 2, 3, but a completely different form. So for each test, you could have a different form that's associated with it. Again, my information comes in just fine. And then there's information on the sample. So this is real important. Remember that barcode that I scanned, that was SFN 3485. It's traveled all the way through the system to this form right here. So this automatically ties the sample results to the information that we collected in the field for that sample. And at this point, I just need to go through and start filling out this form with all the information that I need from my test results. And I am not going to make you sit through me entering all that information. I'm again going to use that feature of pasting in my answers from earlier, but all the information for this test can be saved in here. In addition, you can see here where it says testing procedures. If I expand that, I actually have documentation in here on the specific test that needs to be performed. So I can actually read that and see the details on that test. And then I can, if I expand this out, I can see the actual data values that have been entered here. I'll just scroll down through here to the end. There's a lot of calculations that have gone in here, but one of the things that I wanted to show you is it can be illustrated right here. So you can see the weight of these pieces is 8.9, and if we look down at the bottom, I'll go ahead and paste those answers again. You can see that the test results is pass. Well, if I come in here and I change this to 9.1, hit done, you see the test results fail. I'll wait for that to catch up on the screen there. Okay, so the test results fail. So what that's showing is that we've got a lot of calculations that are built into the form itself. So the person doing the test doesn't have to do those calculations. They just have to enter in the appropriate information from the test, and the form will take care of determining pass-fail. Now, some of that can be left over to the person making the test to make a judgment, but a lot of calculations can be put right in there, just simplifying that workflow. So they just have to worry about putting in their test results. And again, I can have a signature or pictures associated with this test result. And I'm going to put in that it's the current time there, and that's it. That's the process for completing and saving the information that from the test results that were collected in the lab. I'm connected to the network right now, so I'm going to go ahead and send that data off. If we go and look in Workforce, we can now specify I'm done with this lab test, so I can click Finish. And that's finishing that up. And that will indicate to the people back in the main office that that work is complete. So I'm done with this. I'll stop sharing on my mobile device. I'll take you back to Workforce, the dispatcher version in the web browser, and you can see here that that test is complete. That's been assigned. Right here. All right, so I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. So this is what we just completed in the workflow. We assigned it a test on a sample in the lab. That was done via the email that was sent. So an email was sent with a link to Workforce. I clicked that link and it took me right to that lab, or that sample that was collected, and allowed me to assign it to someone in the lab. I then tested the work. I changed roles to be someone who tests in the lab. I tested that sample and then saved all of my information into that survey 123 that form that was specific to my test. And you can see right in there, it specified whether we passed or failed based on the criteria for that particular test. The last phase in the process is monitoring the results and giving visibility to the rest of the organization that the tests are complete and what those tests are indicating. And you can see here, I've just got another email that's been automatically generated from this workflow that tells me that this project has been completed. For more information, click here. So this is the kind of email that might go out to a project manager that originally asked or originally required this test to be completed for a particular project. And then they could see all of the test results that have been performed. So you can see here, there's the test that was just performed. As I scroll down here, you can see all the information that was collected in that particular form. Lots of data on that information, but the most important information there at the end is that particular test passed. And as an organization, we can get an understanding of what percentage of our tests are passing, where all of them have been performed, the different kinds of tests. This is a different test that we didn't show in this particular example. And then how are my samples stacking up based on maybe supplier? Where are my suppliers falling short? Where are their tests falling short? And I can get that summary information here within this dashboard again. Again, this is completely configurable. So if you want to show different kinds of information, as you see over here in the widgets up at the top, we have sites yet to be visited, tests complete, and field tests complete. So a lot of information can be shared, and maybe you could have different varieties of these dashboards for different people in your organization so that they can get some different insights into that part of that workflow that's most important to them. And with that, that's the end of my demonstration. I'd like to just come back and just summarize real quick here the total workflow that we went through. Again, we started by assigning work to somebody to go out in the field. We use that workforce application, the web application, to assign a sample to be collected out in the field. We then switched over to a mobile workflow where we're the person that's going out and collecting that sample. We used workforce on the mobile device, on my iPad, to see what work has been assigned to me. I use Navigator to navigate to that work, and then I use Survey 123 to collect a sample at that particular location. When we collected that sample, we scanned a QR code and that associated identifier with that particular sample. We affixed that QR code to the sample to travel back into the lab. And then back in the lab, once we were notified that that sample was complete and had been collected, we assigned the actual test for that sample to someone in the field. And again, we used that workforce web application to assign that work in the lab. That the lab technician used workforce on their iPad again to see what work had been assigned to them. And then they used Survey 123 to collect the results of their sample. And at the end, I showed a dashboard. That's this monitor test operations dashboard that was used to show the results of those tests to the entire organization and make it completely transparent. And in that process of making that transparent, speed up the flow of information throughout the organization. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Terry. I think we'll.
Okay, thanks, Tom. So first off, let me say that this entire webinar will be available in a day or two, and we will send out the link to that. You will be able to find it on our website with generally not any problem. And let's deal with a couple of questions here. Let's see, there's a question about how emails are generated in Workforce.
Yeah, good question. So there's a couple of different ways that we can generate the emails notifications that you saw here. The way that we were doing it in this demonstration was leveraging a technology called webhooks, and that can which you could then use. There's other applications called Microsoft Flow or Integromat. Those are two example applications that can listen to those webhooks and can respond with some process. And so that's how we were, once a survey was completed, we were firing off some logic that sent an email and created an assignment in Workforce. So that's the technology that we used in this demonstration. It's webhooks. It's a capability of Survey 123, and in this case we used Integromat was the application that we used for responding to those webhooks. Another technology that we could have used here was the GeoEvent server. So if you have GeoEvent, that could accomplish the same thing using the GeoEvent server within our technology.
All right, and really sort of a follow-on, let's see, how do you put calculations into Survey 123 that were shown?
Oh, good question. Yeah, Survey 123 natively supports within the Survey 123 application. You can configure that form to have any kind of switch logic or calculations that you want. You configure that using Excel on the desktop, and there's lots of great documentation for how to do those calculations within that Excel file. So it's not doing the web version of Survey 123 where you interactively create the survey that way. It's using the version where you modify it on your desktop using Excel. It's Survey 123 Connect.
Okay. Here's another one. Do you have the capability of integrating with Ashtoware materials was the question. So
That's a good question. You know, honestly, I'm not sure of what Ashtoware materials integration looks like. But what I can say on our side is that all of this data that you've seen in this process can be available via web services or can be available via database connection to integrate with any other third-party environment. There's no out-of-the-box integration, but the access to our data is wide open. So the access points for doing that integration are available on our side.
okay. And let's see. Can you generate printable reports from the workflow?
Yeah, good question. So yes, we can. There's a couple of different ways that we can create printable reports. Survey123 itself has a report generation capability that would allow you to take a Microsoft Word document and associate a template for generating that report, and then you could use that to generate a report on any one of those tests. So probably the most important report that you'd probably have is that last one where we were using Survey123 to collect all the information for from that particular test. That's where that Survey123 report would be really great for outputting a Word document that had some formatting on it for all of those test results. In addition to that, ArcGIS also has other reporting capabilities just within the desktop application that you can point at some of the same data that we've been talking about here and generate reports out of it. So, so you can build reports on anything, including like things like how long it takes to respond to this work once it's been assigned and things like that. That would be other things you could generate the report on, but that would be using our desktop tools in ArcGIS Pro. But probably the one that it makes the most sense is that first one, that Survey123 report that would be associated with any of those forms.
Okay, and so the next question, it says, it looks like there are multiple applications that are working hand in hand, i.e. the workflow. Can you talk about the software that's needed to really sort of support this workflow, and do different people need everything that you identified?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's definitely part of our approach to have kind of simple, focused applications that work together. I mean, you saw on the mobile device, you saw at least three. That was Workforce for maintaining your work, Navigator for navigating to it, and Survey123 for collecting the information at the location. It depends on what part of that workflow you want to implement, as far as which of those applications that you would need. Maybe you have an existing system for tracking the data that you collect at the location. So maybe you just need to have a work list on the mobile device and navigation. So in that case, you'd use Workforce and Navigator. Or maybe your people know how to navigate to all these locations, so that utility wouldn't be something you wouldn't implement. So maybe you just use Workforce and Survey123. So you can really decide as far as which of these applications you want to deploy to based on the workflows that you want to implement with this solution.
Okay, all right, thanks. So another question really has to do with the ability to configure or customize the user roles to make sure that some people only see certain things based on their role. So for example, if you want contractors entering data, what can they see, or can you configure and customize for specific roles.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as you saw in every one of these applications, my identity traveled through there with me, and me being signed in was a key part of accessing the information that was applicable to me. So you could absolutely have a contractor who could submit a form, but they couldn't see everybody else's data that was submitted, or anything like that. So yeah, it's definitely secure, and you can put in these controls for who sees what within the application.
And the same, obviously, that if you did not want the field collection staff being able to see all the rolled up results, again, that could also be configured as well, yeah?
Sure, yeah, like those calculations that we were showing, you wouldn't necessarily have to expose all of that to them. That could happen on the back end.
Okay, and so next question, how are the GPS coordinates captured if collection is done offline?
Good question. The GPS receiver in these iPhones and iPads is still functioning when you're working offline. So you do need to have some kind of GPS receiver in the device in order to do that. But the location is still captured in that offline mode. It doesn't need to be online in order to capture that location.
Okay. And the next question, is it possible to create an interface with other existing legacy systems, or to be able to push and pull data from this particular application? So again, I think really the ability to integrate these applications into an existing solution.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same. It's really that same answer on the AASHTO, and that is that on our side we expose all this data via web services or through database access. So if you have some sort of push and pull integration pattern with existing systems, that I could absolutely work with this system.
Okay, and what operating systems does your mobile application support?
It's on. Let's see. That's a good question. I know it's available on iOS and Android, and I believe also Windows Phone. But I'm not sure if all those applications are supported on Windows Phone or on the Windows operating system.
All
I know
right.
Survey 123 is. I'm not sure about Workforce and Navigator.
Okay, and let's see, if someone was interested in learning more about how much of this is easily available, or how would they go about if they were interested in either learning more or actually implementing these solutions?
Yeah, I mean, if the simplest way is email us at transportation@esri.com, and we can work with you to help see how talk you through what parts of this workflow make the most sense for you, and then what's the process for deploying it. You can do transportation@esri.com, or you could email me directly, tbrenneman@esri.com.
Okay. And actually, I think we've run out of questions. So with that, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up. We want to thank you all for being on the webinar today. As we mentioned, this particular webinar will be available within a day or two. We'll send out additional notices so that if you want a colleague to be able to see this, they'll actually be able to experience the full webinar from the website. So with that, again, thank you all for joining, and we look forward to seeing you on the next installment of the webinars for DOTs. Thanks again.